Welcome back, fiction friends. It's Kristy, and welcome to the Elements of Fiction podcast. And we will be working with figurative language again this week. So let's review what figurative language is if you do not remember last week. Figurative language is phrasing that goes beyond the literal meaning of words, and all figurative language are literary devices that will work to heighten imagery within a piece of novel, such as any sort of fiction or nonfiction, whatever it is. So there are similes, metaphors, personifications, alliteration, assonance, and onomatopoeia. Alliteration, assonance, onomatopoeia all have to do with sounds in the word, like all like 3 different words that start with A. Very interesting stuff. Similes are comparing 2 things using like or as. Metaphors are comparing 2 things without using like or as, saying something just is another. And then onomatopoeia is just pow, bam, those words that you usually hear and you don't really read all the time. But I will introduce you to 2 more this week. Hyperboles, which exaggerate something, and you will get an example of that a little later. And an oxymoron, which joins together 2 things that are completely contrary to each other. So, now, our main goal is to look at pieces of alliteration that work together. Different types of figurative language that works together. That will create one message for the reader. So we will be looking at a specific point in the book. So our book is about someone who joins a society, and I had a guess of that he was going to time travel. That's not quite what is happening. The people who I'm with are making, they want him to go back to the 1880s, 1882 New York to be exact. But they have to go back to that setting and change everything to look exactly how it had looked. So, figurative language is very useful in this book because there's a lot of describing things because you need to create a picture for the reader to greater understand it. So let's look at our first one, is when someone who's helping Simon Morley, who is the main character of our book, he's helping him, he has to start acting like he's in the 1880s, and he has to grow a beard out, and all of the things that come along with that. So let's read the quote. "I'll poke around in the debris of the past and try to find out for you. Over the weekend, I've been digging into the 80s, and I'll be doing this a great deal more." So this is our example of a hyperbole, and what this is he's saying, I'll be digging into the 80s, not actually digging. That's an exaggeration. He'll be looking into, seeing what he can find, the information, but it's not actually digging into ground or anything. So this is when Simon needs to know more things about the 80s, so when he's put into the setting, he knows how to act, he knows what to suspect. So, within the same page, we have another piece of figurative language that talks about the same thing, roughly, they were discussing. So it is. "The bead trim caught the light, glittering a clear deep red, shimmering as though the garment were moving." And these are both on page 77. So this is a simile because the garment is not moving, but shimmering as though it were. It's kind of a sly little figurative language simile in there. But it's describing something that Danziger, who is the person who's been poking around the debris of the past, the one who's kind of in charge of Simon going to New York back to the 1880s, and he's compiling all these things, all these real replicas or real artifacts from that time. And that's one of the things he found. He found like a pretty woman's dress, and it was very shimmery, as though the garment were moving. It uses like or as. So, yes. Now, this is continued onto the next page, but it is also said the gown glowed like a jewel, and it was a sad and drab dress. Now, those two quotes I told you are not about the same dress. So they have a dress that was actually from the 1882s, but the color washed out from it. It turned sad and drab, which obviously did not turn sad and drab. That dresses cannot be sad, so that would be personification. But they remade the dress with the colors and how it would have looked if it were, like, when it first got made. Because after surviving 200 years, or 100 years, the color is obviously different. So they said now the gown glowed like a jewel. The gown is not a jewel, as itself not one big giant red jewel. So this is a simile again. So we have hyperbole, some similes, and a nice personification. And they all describe one thing. They talk about this dress in the 1880s, which is where Simon's going to be going. So, it is very clear that an image is being created. Now, that is just focusing on one part of the task in the book, which is Simon getting ready for the 1880s. But you can find clumps of these everywhere in the book. Many figurative language, all compiled into one to describe one thing. The one I chose was for this dress. So you can see how it's making an image. You can see the dress glowing like a jewel. You can see the beading and the trim around the dress, the clear, deep red shimmering, looking like the dress is moving, like someone's dancing in it. And then you can see the artifact dress, how it was sad and drab. You see those same characteristics, but it's not so shiny. It's not so colorful and vibrant. Now, this language that is being using is definitely drawing the reader in and is influencing the mood. First, it's drawing you in because it's like, wow, like you're creating this beautiful image of this dress that's being told to you. So you're very interested and you're like, ooh, like I want to read more about what this dress is looking like. You want to have even more little details that the author tells you, so you have an even more beautiful just idea of what it looks like. And then, of course, that's influencing the mood, because you're like, ooh, that's very curious, very interesting. Like, who's going to wear the dress? And your mood's just like, it's just describing a beautiful red dress, like, just enjoying the novel right now. It's very calm, kind of mysterious, because you don't know exactly where they're going to be in New York. You know the time, you know the place, but not exactly. So I definitely say figurative language and looking at big portions of it do come together to create a message for the reader. So next week we will be working on mood, which is what we left off on, coincidentally. So I'll see you in a week. Stay tuned, fiction friends. Bye, guys. Leanna.